Well, hello again, everyone. We've been experiencing some technical difficulties-ish.
Story of my life.
Yeah, you're pretty tech savvy though, so I wouldn't be concerned coming from you, but for me, it's like you touch it and it blows up. Sam's like 50-50. I don't really know about Angela's tech skills, so
And they're pretty bad.
yeah. Well, you should see the margins in these motions that I file all the time.
It's my biggest pet peeve.
It's so bad. I can't do it. But anyways, we have come together to talk about several things that have happened since the last time that we were in LA together for the January 19th hearing in the Britney case, right?
Right.
Yes.
All right. So why don't you kind of start us off, Sam?
Oh, me? Okay. Well, you all wanted to do a video, so we're doing a video about the hearing. I honestly can't remember hardly anything. Let me pull up one of the orders. I mean, it was definitely a very fiery hearing. Let's say that. All right, well, I pulled this order. Why don't you all just give your all's takeaway of the hearing? Just
Talk amongst yourselves.
Yeah, okay. So I thought that it was really good. I think that we all kind of showed up thinking that, well, actually, I would say that we all kind of thought leading into us going to LA for this hearing that it was going to be kind of boring, closing up old news, deal with the accounting. That was still kind of lingering out there. We knew there was still fee petitions, and we were curious to see how Rosengard was going to be dealing with those fee petitions now that he's basically exclusively representing Britney. We know that he's exclusively representing Britney because leading up to this hearing, there was all that mess with Jamie Lynn, who, much like everybody else in Britney's family, just decided that, you know, she was going to continue to try to capitalize off of Britney's name and release her oversized font book, memoir, and go on a little talking tour and, you know, just make up some really weird stuff or put edge on really innocuous things to try to garner, you know, support and money. And Rosengard sent her a cease and desist letter. And Sam aptly pointed out immediately after that occurred, that's great news because it means that Britney is fully trusting Rosengard to handle everything in her life. So then when we walked into the hearing on the 19th, we were interested to see kind of how that shook out. And it was, I mean, it was explosive. Emily, you want to talk about the hearing itself?
Oh my goodness. Well, I just thought it was extremely interesting from a layman's perspective because I have never seen two attorneys go at it the way that Rosengard and Weingarten do. It's pretty fascinating. Rosengard is zealous in the way that he represents his clients. He is not afraid to call people out, and I really appreciate it. So it's interesting though with Weingarten, the things that I heard him say after the trial. I'm curious now with the letter that he's referring to that he wanted to quote unquote F with Rosengard's head. I'm kind of curious to see how this is all going to play out.
So at the hearing itself, the accounting did come up. Penny tried to kind of take control of the situation. And she said, you know, these are different categories of things that we want to discuss. You know, old news, present news, future news, things of that nature. And Rosengart very respectfully listened and then immediately ignored everything that Penny said. And decided that he was going to talk about what he wanted to talk about. And boy, did he talk about what he wanted to talk about, which essentially dealt with discovery I mean, he made it
Mhm.
very clear he wants to depose every person that's ever been involved in this, that he has every intention of turning over every rock that could possibly exist, that could possibly lead to evidence that could be used either in criminal action or in a civil action. He straight up said that he believes criminal activity has occurred by more than one player in this conservatorship, and that's a pretty strong statement. Emily mentioned Weingarten and Rosengard. Go, did I get that right? Weingarten
Weingarten, Rosengard.
and
Yeah,
Rosengard.
it's confusing.
When it came out of my mouth, it sounded really weird. But
It sounds weird.
they went at each other, and basically, Weingarten accused Rosengard of being a liar, like 4 times on the record. And as an attorney, Sam and I have never actually openly been accused of lying.
Yeah,
in
nor
the
have we ever accused
or-
another attorney of lying.
Or
Or-
Yeah.
evidence. I mean, that to me was just such an overreach when he was like, you're leaking information to the press and then turning around and using it as a source.
Oh, he has a narrative for sure.
Like, yeah, it's just fascinating to me that that's the kind of setup. Because I mean, I feel like if I was an attorney, I would be pretty upset if somebody was accusing me of, that seems criminal. Like that
Oh,
seems like
I would consider sanctions. So not criminal necessarily, but I would certainly consider filing a motion for sanctions against the attorney. I think Rosengard made the motion on the record. If you want to consider his protestations orally as a motion for sanctions, he did ask the court to correct him and instruct him not to make statements to that effect. Sanctions, in Kentucky are pretty simple. It's a Rule 11 motion, and it's basically for when somebody acts outside the rules of professional responsibility and or ethical rules that we all as attorneys are bound by. Calling another attorney a liar is a very serious offense just from a professional standpoint, but also like when you're representing your clients, you don't need to be defending yourself against other people. What you're doing is you're working for your clients. So I think
I don't think
Weingarten
Weingarten actually called Rosengart a liar. I think he tiptoed around it, but he's too chicken to actually say it. It all started with in some of Rosengard's objections that were filed prior to the January 19th hearing. He referenced or cited to the New York Times article that reported on the surveillance in Brittany's bedroom. Weingarten accused Rosengart of leaking information to media outlets and specifically referenced the New York Times, and then using their reporting as sources in his filings.
I don't have the transcript, but I'm almost 90% sure that at least at 2 different points in the hearing, Weingarten said Rosengart is lying to this court. Lying.
Right.
So
I know Rosengart also said that Weingarten is lying on the basis of that.
Right.
Which
Yeah, I remember that. That was it. And I mean, that was like a pretty, there's a couple impressions I got, and I don't know about you guys, but I would say that as an attorney, I was very surprised that the judge let them go on for as long as they did. I have been in situations in court where I've been stopped, or I've had other counsel stopped and been like, that's enough, or have been asked to respond, and where I've been told no, or very briefly, you're on a time limit. That was something that really surprised me, was how long she let them go on, and not just the attorneys that were at the counsel tables, but just the ones that were on Zoom. And I don't know, I just wanted to hear what you all thought about that.
She had no control over that.
Yeah, that's what I say. Benny has no control of the courtroom.
Absolutely none. And I will say, like, Sam and I talked about this, and I think we actually all talked about this after the hearing. Like, it wasn't only that she had no control over the courtroom, but she definitely came down, just from an objective perspective, she came down as giving Rosengart a lot of leeway versus by the end of the hearing, she was shutting everybody else down. No, 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 no. There's an exchange that actually would be hilarious to read in the transcript that dealt with the dates where all of these things were being scheduled for the future for the next hearing. And basically, Rosengard was like, I'm available on this day. And Weingarten was like, no, that's not going to work for us. We want it sooner. And then all of a sudden, Rosengard wasn't even available on the first day that he said he was available, and kept getting pushed back and back based on his calendar. And I mean, it was clearly he was controlling the entire pace and the narrative for this case. I mean, he's in control of it completely. So I think that that's really interesting. But you're right, Angela. I was appalled at how little control Penny had over that courtroom, period. I mean, it was a circus.
I guess like the word I would use is I was just surprised. I just had not seen that in my professional career or even before that, you know, like I have been in courtrooms, I've been in courtrooms and observed court longer than I've been an attorney. And I've just never seen a judge allow so much, you know, allow two attorneys to just have essentially the full floor for as long as they wanted, and to say pretty much whatever they wanted. It was surprising.
Weingarten did, though, point out during one of his arguments that this is not just a Jamie Spears issue or a Sam Ingham issue or the other people involved, Loeb and Loeb issue, that this is a judicial issue, that what Rosengard is saying in all of his pleadings and in court and moving forward about this process, everything that happened to Brittany was approved by the court. And Weingarten made that very clear to Judge Penny. Like, it's not just us that he's attacking, it's you too.
That was very interesting when he brought that up, because he was like, everything that has happened to her was approved by this court and by you or Reva Gotch, Your Honor. And it's like, oh, it would be really hard, I imagine, as the judge in that situation, if you knew that, like, ethically maybe you had screwed up. How do you retain control of that courtroom once you know that Rosengard knows what you did? You know,
and I think she panders to him. I mean, I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but I do think she panders.
Should she technically, though, at this point, does she have reason enough to recuse herself from this?
No, it takes a lot. It takes a lot to recuse yourself from the bench. Sam, you can talk on that more, but
I'm just curious, because it just seems like if you're not able to effectively do your job because of your past choices, how do you maintain control of something when you have none of the attorneys involved respect you?
Well, I guess because she hasn't been directly implicated in anything at this point. You know, none of her decisions have been called into question by Rosengard or any of the attorneys. So it would just be an inference of impropriety. I don't think it's enough for a recusal.
Was she on the bench, though, the last accounting paperwork that was approved?
Yes.
So that has come into question. And it has been directly implicated by Rosengard as something that they're going back in
Right.
Back in the stacks of wax. I mean, they're going yesteryears, 13 years, and they're investigating everything. And I think that, you know, it's still not enough to recuse yourself. I mean, judges make decisions all the time, and those decisions may be right, may be wrong. It's for the Court of Appeals and or judicial canon, a body that governs judges, to make decisions on whether or not those were the right moves. But here's the thing I will say. Penny could have done more. Gotts could have definitely done more. Gotts had a very involved role in this case. It's going to be very interesting to see what comes out as time goes on about her specific role in this case. Angela, are you okay? Because you keep popping in and out. I'm just concerned that
Did it pop?
it's like you
Yeah,
keep
I'm
going on
fine.
and off video.
Oh, I didn't know.
Yeah.
Everything
I
okay
did
in your
not
life?
realize
Is
that was
everything
happening. I have been-
okay over there?
yeah, I am okay. I am here
Okay.
and okay.
So yeah, the accounting has been implicated, but I don't think Rosengart has, questioned Penny's signing off on accounting. I think he's questioning more of what happened behind that accounting and, was the information presented to the court and to the parties accurate,
Yeah, and I think that it brings to a point that you and I have discussed in the past on multiple occasions. If two attorneys walk into court and they say, we've worked this out and here's an agreed order that we want you to sign, there's very little that a judge can actually do to delve into whether or not that's appropriate. So really a lot of it's gonna fall on Ingham and on Vivian in terms of that. But I will say that just based on some of the things that we've read on GOTS in the past, she's taken a very direct role and made explicit statements that were unsupported by any facts. So I think that that's going to be interesting. But I mean, I think that Penny is looking. Rosengart is a former U.S. assistant attorney. Okay? He knows how this works in terms of criminal investigations. And if he is on the record saying that criminal activity occurred, then he's not saying that with a grain of salt. Okay, this isn't him elaborating or exaggerating. It's him saying people committed crimes here. And I guarantee you he's going to hand over everything that he finds to the proper authoritative governing body over the criminal aspect of this case. And I think Penny wants to make sure that her name's not on that list, So.
What I thought was really interesting was that Rosengart did not want to discuss Sam Ingham's fee petition. And he said that he wanted to continue that because the objections he filed to Weingarten's fee petition on behalf of Jamie Spears were, I think he said, intrinsically tied to Sam Ingham's request for fees. And just before that, he said in those objections, he raised the possibility of significant criminal misconduct. So what he basically said was that Ingham might also fall into this category that I've objected to based on criminal misconduct. At least that's what my take.
I'm interested to see where Ingham ends up after all this is said and done, because I mean, you do have it's just such a mixed bag with Ingham. I mean, you have as far back as 2014, him bringing to the court's attention that his client wanted out of this conservatorship. Right. And so you see that in transcripts and in reporting. And then you have Penny looking at him after his client spoke in court last June saying, well, Mr. Ingham, do you know how to do this or what, basically? And it's I'm interested to see seriously how all of this plays out, because I mean, he did get her to speak in court. He did push to the court in 2014 that she wanted a pathway out of the conservatorship. But, at the end of the day, I think he was in it too long and got paid too much to not be complicit.
Right.
So it's going to be interesting to see.
I think,
I was just about to ask you and Emily what you guys think about it and what you think is coming next.
So I guess when I take a step back and I think about all of this, I think about how many people should feel really, really scared right now. Because if I was any of the people involved in this, I would be terrified right now. I would be talking to attorneys. I would be retaining counsel. Because they have good reason. I mean, when Brittany's attorney gets up there and says, I believe that crimes were committed, I'd be shitting my pants if I was involved on Jamie's team, whether I was his former attorney. I mean, because they know that even though they're, Vivian's not representing him anymore, and some of these individuals may not be right now involved, they were at some point. And that's all it takes for you to be tied to this
Yeah.
and to potentially face the consequences that, in my opinion, and in all of our opinions, they should be facing. They should be held accountable. And that whole fear of like, oh crap, I'm actually going to be held accountable for what I was doing and my involvement in this. I don't know. That's what I've just thought about that a lot. I'm just like looking in, like, yeah, I'd be terrified. I'd be running. I'd be, yeah,
Yeah, I'd be terrified too, because
yeah.
I would imagine any crimes that occurred aren't going to be state crimes. They're crimes that involve moving money between financial institutions, business ventures that go across state lines. So most likely
Moving her across state
federal,
lines
moving
multiple
her across state
times.
lines. So yeah, they're looking at federal, most likely federal charges.
And these attorneys and individuals, because they, what makes it, should make it scarier, for what probably makes it even more terrifying is like, they know what those consequences could be. They're not ignorant of what their consequences could be. They're in the financial world, they're attorneys themselves, some of them. So they're probably scared shitless because they know they're not a lay person.
Mhm.
What do you think, Em?
I think it's interesting. I'm curious as to what motivation Ingham had to start calling out the problems that he was seeing, whether that be, I want Brittany to address the court. She no longer wants to be in it. I mean, he went for how many years until he started saying that to the court. So I'm curious what changed between, 2012 versus now. So, I think it's interesting because I think not that I think he's trying to cover his own butt on some level, yeah, but I do think maybe he's at that point now where maybe he's having some sort of ethical, moral dilemma. Like he's older in life, and now hopefully he'll start working with Rosengart and give him. I want them to be working together behind the scenes, kind of lightweight, so that he gets every piece of information from Ingham. Not that I want Ingham on Brittany's team, but I want him to work directly with Rosengart and give him everything, because I don't think Ingham is solely responsible for this, nor do I think he was the one who made all this happen.
Right.
I think he was handed a pretty terrible thing. And I mean, not that he made the best of it. I mean, he was also part of the system, but I don't necessarily think that he's the most evil or morally bankrupt person in the story. So
I think that he is a fool and a coward. And I
Exactly.
think that he took an easy out every time. I mean, the fact that we're seeing things show up in transcripts from 2014 where he's taking it to the judge, and the judge is like, shh, who gives her the right to say that anyways? Who told her that she has any voice in this at all? I mean, that's
Mhm.
kind of like, and then you're dealing with Vivian and you're dealing with Jamie, and I think Vivian already has started working with Rosengart in a way. They agreed for the
Imagine.
first time ever on something, and that's that there needed to be discovery and there needed to be time between now and hearings, which, this whole procedural thing totally blows my mind anyways. The stance where we're at is really that he has objections levied to fee petitions and to the accounting itself. And so he's positioning himself with those objections in a way to sort of pseudo litigate the case. But the outcome of the litigation, so to speak, because it's not a civil lawsuit, the outcome would simply be, the best case scenario would be that he's able to find that they're all culpable and that all of the work that they have done has essentially been fraudulent and or illegal, thus preventing them from getting a dime of her money, and from the court, preventing the court from accepting the last accounting. But procedurally, she's not in a place right now where the outcome from all of this, from the hearings and the mini trial that is going to occur on these subjects, is going to be money. It's not like she's suing them for money right now. So I'm interested to see how all of this is going to translate after all the information is gathered at this stage into some form of recouping the lost funds. And I don't know enough about the mechanisms that could be triggered to kind of flip that script. So procedurally, it's very interesting. I think you're right. It's going to be interesting to see where Sam Ingham falls. Vivian is clearly already doing what she's supposed to do. And Weingarten has already placed himself in a position of essentially blackmail, right? You have this last thing that we should talk about, which is the petition to unseal the record. And he is holding it over their heads like the guillotine, so to speak. Sam, do you have thoughts on that?
I just think it's highly hypocritical. Jamie Spears used the power of the court to seal records and seal hearings for so long and went so broad with his motions to seal. And he sealed everything. So for the first 12 years of this conservatorship, no one knew anything that was going on, not even the financial stuff, which is usually open because they're not talking about medical records or the minor children or anything like that. So now he's doing the reverse and wants to unseal everything that he himself asked to be sealed. Makes no sense. But it does make sense. You listen to Brittany's June testimony when she said that she was threatened by the conservatorship, that it would be embarrassing for her if the judge made public all the quote evidence we have against you. I don't know what they consider to be evidence, what they're going to try to, take out of the record to embarrass her, but they did make the threat, and I guess now they're following through on it.
I don't think that Rosengard thinks there's much of a way out either. Again, I have not looked into the statutes that deal with the unsealing of records in California at this point, but based on the way that Rosengard addressed it in court, he very much did what I would consider a humanitarian appeal. And he said if her father ever loved her, essentially, if Jamie ever loved her, then he wouldn't even be considering unsealing this entire record. To me as a lawyer, and Angela and Sam, feel free to use your experience to comment on this, but as I see it, I only go there making a humanitarian appeal when the law is not on my side and when the facts aren't on my side, which means that I don't have an argument that's going to work to prevent this from happening. So now I'm making an appeal to the census, right? And I'm saying, okay, if you loved her, you wouldn't even be doing this right now.
Is Judge Penny gonna be the deciding factor on whether that gets released or not, or unsealed or not?
Yes.
I mean,
So
she'll probably be
based on her like rulings and what we were talking about earlier with how she's kind of taking a back seat as far as the judicial role goes, like she doesn't seem to be, I don't know, leading this case the way I would imagine a judge to be leading a courtroom. Do you think that she'd be more willing to side with Rosengard versus Weingarten?
Well, she did just seal the transitional care plan that Jody Montgomery, I think, requested to be sealed. I don't think there's an overriding interest to unseal the entire record. The public doesn't have any reason to look at Britney Spears or any conservatee's medical records. That is absurd. There's no public interest in that. Maybe the financial side, there might be some interest. I think best case scenario for Jamie Spears and Weingarten is that they get some things unsealed, but with heavy redactions. Like when the Mueller report came out, it was like 2 words, then like 3 lines of just black redactions, and then like 3 more words, something like that. The whole record's not going to be unsealed. That would be very inappropriate.
The purpose that Weingarten has stated is in order to exonerate his client from what he's considering slanderous or defamatory accusations that have been levied against him on the record. Now, at this stage, again, talking about it from just a purely civil procedure perspective, I mean, what is the worst that can happen to Jamie by virtue of this court's jurisdiction and the pleadings that exist right now that are being, litigated? So these are fee objections and objections to the accounting. This court, Judge Penny, is not going to be putting Jamie P. Spears in jail. Okay, so I think that argument is lackluster because she's not going to be awarding damages to Brittany from Jamie or from Brittany to Jamie for defamation because there's no defamation suit right now.
Right.
So all of these things are very inappropriate from a procedural perspective. And that would be my argument from Rosengard's side, is that this doesn't even make sense at this level. If they want to sue for defamation, they know where the civil courts are and they can sue for defamation. And if they want to try to get records released using that procedural mechanism, they can try. But at this stage, it makes no sense. And again, like Brittany said, they're hanging it over her head in blackmail. They controlled her for 13 years. I don't know what's in her medical record, and I don't want to know what's in her medical record because it's her own effing business. So please, back off from being evil and cruel, and maybe try to amend in some way your soul so that you don't burn in hell forever. That's kind of where I would be.
Might be too late for that. Might just
I
double
think
down
I would
at this
be,
point.
yeah, I agree. So, I really think that based on everything we've heard, that the unsealing of the records is simply another way to humiliate Brittany and to make her look bad. This is not about exonerating his client. It is about making her look bad, showing her private struggles so she can look crazy and he can look normal.
The irony of it is, to me, is at this point, I don't care what's in those medical records. A, I wouldn't read them. B, even if somebody shouted it to me on the street, I'd be like, oh, sounds like a personal problem. Like, I'm sorry, but you're 40 something years old. How would you not have something somewhat incriminating or embarrassing in your medical records? We all do.
Yeah.
I just think it's hilarious that they're going to try and use that, trying to weaponize that when at the end of the day, cast the first stone. That's that kind of thing.
Well,
I'm
he also
nobody here is
controlled-
innocent. So
He controlled her medical treatment for 13 years. So I mean, it's like a setup for failure because I'm going to put you in all these really weird positions and put you on all these drugs that we're not even going to tell you what these drugs are that have extremely excruciating side effects, psychologically and physically. We're going to force IUDs in your body. We're going to do all this crazy stuff. And then we're going to say those medical records that we literally created with our friends, the doctors who are also probably culpable in this case for ongoing care, to use it against you. I wouldn't put anything past them at all. So I agree with you, Emily. I don't care how it would come out because to me, none of it would be trustworthy. None of it would be credible. And even if it was trustworthy and or credible, I don't give a shit.
I'm like, you know what? At the end of the day, this woman has been through hell. And you know what? If you want to diagnose her with every single thing in the handbook, I don't care. She still deserves to be free. It's
right.
Totally irrelevant to me. So
and they deserve to pay. She deserves to be free and she deserves justice and they deserve to pay for their actions because nobody is above the law in this country. Nobody.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's a pretty good place to wrap up unless anybody has closing thoughts and or sentiments.
Nope.
Nope, other than I'm very excited to see what the next few months hold. So I'm excited.
I'm just excited
justice happen.
I am excited for the possibility that Jamie could go to jail.
Oh my God, yes.
Yeah.
It's something I dream about every day. It's on my mind. And I just would love to see him in prison. And
I would love to see
a lot of people,
there's a lot of people.
I wake up every day and I think, what a perfect world for all these horrible people to be held responsible and for Jamie Spears to go to jail where he belongs.
Do you all think Jamie Lynn is going to be part of this? For real part of this?
I don't. For me, it's too early to tell.
I don't think so. I think she's, what do you call him? A useful idiot.
Yeah, I think until you criminalize being a bad sister, I don't think that she, which maybe it should be a crime, but I just don't think that she necessarily had anything. Yeah, I
I-
guess it's hard for me to imagine her directly being involved. Like, I could
Sure.
make the
Yeah.
argument that she is a terrible human being. Like, you're a bad sister, you're a bad person, you're a bad friend, but was it criminal? I don't know.
I would like to see
Wow.
Jamie Lynn's best friend and her business manager. I like to see her go to jail.
Well, here's what I would say is that I'd like to see exactly how much money Jamie Lynn has been getting paid and for what job she has been getting paid
Good job.
as it relates to Brittany's estate for the last 13 years. I'd like to see when that stopped. We all know that she tried to make a bid to take over the conservatorship at some point. So
The trust.
the trust. So at what point did she feel like that was going to be appropriate? Why did she feel like that was going to be appropriate? What were the conversations behind the scene about that being appropriate? And like, you know, the capitalization on her sister's situation is just nothing is too low for Jamie Lynn. Nothing is too low. So I'll be interested to see any conversations that took place between her and her father in the background over the course of the last 13 years, her and her mother.
That would be interesting. I
Over
think
the
she's
course
very
of
much
the
a
13
daddy's
years.
girl.
Do you think that that will be, will Rosengart in the next few months, in the next year, is that part of this process, him trying to gain access to those conversations? Or is that maybe part of a different
I think he'll
criminal
depose Jamie Lynn.
trial?
I think he has to depose Jamie Lynn, particularly because of her active nature in the conservatorship early on, and then trying to take over the trust at a later date. And anybody that received payments, that significant amounts of money from Brittany's estate, I think it should be talked to in this case. And I think at this point too, if I was Brittany and my sister's going to come out and try to drop a book deal right after I finally get free from this horrendous situation after 13 years, I'd like to put a little pressure on you. I'd like to see
Yeah.
how you handle the real questions from a real attorney, you know?
Yeah. Oh, you got so much to say in your book. Come talk
Right.
to my lawyer about it. Yeah.
Yes.
I'm here for that. Yeah.
That's right.
Hey guys, I gotta jump off here.
Bye,
Oh,
Reggie.
look at little Remy.
All right, guys,
Little
until
distinguished
next
gentleman.
time, the next hearing is in July and we should all be there.
Or
So
in March.
Oh, there's another
Yeah.
one in March now.
Yeah, it came on the calendar a little while ago, March 16th,
Okay.
on Lynn's petition for fees.
Oh, but okay, so we knew that that was going to happen, but just so everybody out there that wasn't at the hearing, doesn't have the minutes, knows, that was the only one where Rosengart was kind of like, I think that we're going to be able to work this out. So he put it on a pretty early calendar date. I wouldn't be surprised if that's resolved before March and there is not going to be any appearances in March. The next big fireworks should be in July. So I think that, but that's a good point. Technically, there is one scheduled in March, but I do think they're going to work that out, that fee petition out. So,
One more thing, I do think at the beginning of the hearing, Rosengart said his motion to compel discovery or whatever the issue was over TriStar, Lou Taylor, Robin Greenhill's depositions, they took it off calendar. I think at the hearing, he said it's going to go back on calendar. So if that goes back on calendar before July, that one's going to be really fun to watch.
fireworks, absolute fireworks,
Yeah.
because them's the devils over at TriStar for sure. And Emily's pointed out on multiple occasions, really going to be interesting with TriStar because they represent so many other celebrities. They represent
That's
so
what I
many,
can't wait to see.
so much other talent out there.
Yeah.
So, all right,
That's
Angela.
just, that's really the only way to get these people to do anything is you have to affect their bottom line. You have to come for their money. That's all anybody
Yes.
cares about. It's
That's
Yeah,
exactly
so,
what
like,
Brittany
okay,
did. She
cool.
was like, I'm not
Yeah, we
working
can play
anymore.
that game. No, we can play that game. Like, yeah, it's on.
Yeah, and I think Rose and Daddy's got her back big time, so.
All
All right,
right.
guys.
Bye, guys.
Good
All
to
right,
see you
bye
all.
everyone.
Bye.
Stay warm.
Ah.